On January 5, 1942, as the streets of Tokyo echoed with victory celebrations, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto gathered his staff aboard the Imperial Fleet flagship Yamato. He ordered preparations for the second phase of Japan's Pacific campaign. Reports from the Philippines, Malaya, and the Dutch East Indies showed overwhelming success. Japan's armies were advancing rapidly across Asia, but Yamamoto, though the architect of Pearl Harbor, felt uneasy. He knew these victories could not last forever. Yamamoto believed Japan had at best 18 months before American industry would rise and overwhelm them. He had never wanted this war. His opposition to endless conflict was so public that his allies feared for his life. That is why he remained at sea, far from assassins in Tokyo. He often warned his officers that Japan must show restraint and use early victories to secure a favorable peace before the tide turned. At that moment, Japan's expansion looked unstoppable. American battleships lay crippled at Pearl Harbor. British warships, the Repulse and the Prince of Wales, had been sunk. Manila and Hong Kong had fallen. Singapore was close to surrender. Yet, the one goal Yamamoto had hoped for, the destruction of the American carriers, had failed. Those carriers were still roaming the Pacific, posing a deadly threat. To end the war quickly, Yamamoto wanted a single decisive strike that would force the Allies to negotiate. He considered attacking the Soviet Union, but the army refused, focused on China. He proposed invading Australia, but that plan would take too long. Instead, Yamamoto developed Operation MI, an ambitious plan to lure America's carriers into a trap near Midway Island and destroy them. Alongside it, Operation AL would seize Alaska's Aleutian Islands, extending Japan's defensive perimeter. Before these plans unfolded, something unexpected happened. In April 1942, American bombers led by Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle struck Tokyo. The attack caused little damage but dealt a huge psychological blow. The Japanese realized that the United States was far from defeated. Yamamoto accelerated his plans for Midway, hoping to deliver the knockout blow. In June, the Battle of Midway began. It ended in disaster. 4 Japanese carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, were sunk. Hundreds of planes and their best pilots were lost. It was the turning point of the war. Though the defeat was hidden from the Japanese public, Yamamoto knew the empire's naval dominance had been broken. Still, operations in the South Pacific pressed on. From their base at Rabaul, Japanese forces moved toward New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, hoping to isolate Australia. They bombed Darwin and advanced toward Port Moresby, but were stopped in the Coral Sea by American and Australian forces. It was the first major Japanese setback, showing that the Allies were learning fast. In Washington, American commanders debated how to strike back. General Douglas MacArthur wanted a grand offensive through New Guinea. Admiral Ernest King pushed for a Navy-led attack through the Solomons. King's plan won approval. The first target, Guadalcanal, where Japanese engineers were building an airfield that could threaten Allied shipping. Despite rushed training and confusion, the invasion was set for early August. Over 17,000 U.S. Marines would land under Admiral Richmond Turner, with carrier support from Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher. Rehearsals were chaotic, but there was no time to delay. On August 7, 1942, under cloudy skies, American carriers launched their first strikes. Japanese bases at Tulagi, Gavutu, and Guadalcanal were bombed without warning. By dawn, the Marines began landing. On Guadalcanal, they met no resistance. The Japanese had fled into the jungle, leaving behind half-eaten meals and abandoned tents. On Tulagi and the smaller islands, the story was different. Japanese troops fought ferociously. Machine gun nests, snipers, and suicide charges turned the landings into chaos. Many Japanese soldiers fought to the death rather than surrender. By the end of the second day, Tulagi and Gavutu were secured, though hundreds of Americans had fallen. On Guadalcanal, the Marines captured the unfinished airstrip and renamed it Henderson Field, after a pilot killed at Midway. It was a vital prize. But while the Marines dug in, Admiral Fletcher decided to withdraw his carriers after only 2 days, fearing Japanese counterattacks. That decision left the men on shore without air cover. From Rabaul, Admiral Mikawa's fleet was already on the move. 5 heavy cruisers and 2 light cruisers raced south through the slot, preparing a night assault on the unsuspecting American fleet. As darkness fell on August 8th, the stage was set for Japan's counterattack. What began as a daring American gamble was about to turn into one of the fiercest and most decisive struggles of the Pacific War. The battle for Guadalcanal had begun.